guys, welcome back. You're listening to the Ancient Health Podcast. Today, I'm so thrilled to introduce our guest. I've actually known our guest for a few years. This is my first time actually getting to meet him in person, but it's Reed Davis. He is a board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist. He is the brains behind the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition course, which is a program that I took several years ago and has really helped me empower so many women over the last few years. So it's meant a lot to me personally. But he served as the health director at the Wellness Center in Southern California for over 10 years. He's helped tens of thousands of clients. He's an expert in the field of functional lab testing. And we're going to spend some time kind of unpacking what that is. So if you've got questions around that, this is going to be a great episode, super informative for you. So Reed, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm so thrilled to host you. I know we're going to cover some ground. It's going to be fun.
My pleasure, Courtney. Here to help, right? I'm the brains and the heart behind FDN.
That's right. You know, it does take a lot of heart. So I can tell it's your passion. And I've been able to see that through your work over the last several years. And I think you really kind of changed the landscape of functional testing because you really gave access to people to learn how to utilize this. So from a health coach's perspective, you know, I was just a stay-at-home mom for years, but I wanted to be able to help people. And you gave me access through this course to be able to run some of these tests, not only on myself and family members, but clients as well. And it's changed the way that I think about health. And I feel like you've given power back to people that maybe aren't going to medical school. And I think that that is probably one of the most valuable things that you've contributed. There's a lot of value there, but that's one that I have personally seen so much value in.
Well, it's huge, you know, and it kind of separated me from the rest of the pack back. You know, I started at the turn of the century trying to help people, and access to the labs meant everything. And I really capitalized on it. I ran thousands of labs on thousands of people, and not only was able to help them, but I recognized patterns that anyone can use. You can learn it's not the labs, it's the interpretation, how we view the data. And who owns the data? You said it. It's the people. That's whose data it is. Lab results don't belong to your doctor. You know, that data belongs to you, the people. And so that's the power. If we put power in someone's hands, that's what it was intended to do.
Yeah. And I think that there's been a huge misconception or maybe just a misunderstanding of labs in general, because we kind of just assume, hey, labs belong in the hands of doctors. We don't really know the difference. We don't know what makes one lab better than another, when one is appropriate. We just wait until we're told that we need to run a lab. And that's usually at the sign of severe breakdown, or what you like to call metabolic chaos. So we'll even talk about some of that language. But what is it specifically about some of these functional labs that you feel like, hey, people need to understand, like, these are metabolic markers. This is really a marker of how efficient your body is compared to just, hey, I'm going to my doctor. They told me I got to run a CBC, and, you know, that's just an annual thing.
Yeah. And even worse, they might run it and get told nothing's wrong with you. You're fine. You know, which is the big thing. That's what people, so even 25 years ago, people were coming in the office, they had a complaint, they've been told by 6, 8, 10 different practitioners, nothing's wrong with you, or here's one thing, it's, you know, low thyroid, or just some marker. And so that wasn't getting the job done. You know, people wanted to know more, and they were willing to do more about their health. They were willing to take some responsibility, and that's a prerequisite. But so I just started running the alternative sort of quacky things of the day, which now are considered standard functional medicine tests. But at the time, they weren't covered by insurance, and even today it's difficult. So doctors don't use them. Doctors don't recommend them. And really the bottom line, this is the most important thing, since everyone had already come in, they came in and they kind of might have had a diagnosis. Nothing's wrong with you, or here's your diagnosis. And they didn't want another diagnosis. They wanted to know what's really wrong. What the hell does that mean? How do I get that? How can I prevent it from getting worse? How can I reverse it if possible? And so it was the idea that, well, what functional, we call them now functional lab markers, to us, they're just indicators of what's out of balance, what's dysfunctional, you know, where are things going wrong so that you could correct it. So in cases where, and you know this, the downward spirals that we are effective with, they're protracted. They've been going on for a long time. They're going to go on for a lot longer if you don't change something. So you can catch these markers in there that tell you what to work on and actually how, and can track your progress. So no one wanted another diagnosis come in my office back in 1999 when I started. I had hair back then. That's how long ago it was. And so, not really. But it was a long time ago. You know, a lot of water a lot of labs have come and gone. And, you know, so I made my own observations, Courtney, and, you know, because you took the course about who gets better and who doesn't. And it wasn't based on medical diagnosis, far from it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting, you know, because I think that's where maybe medical, I mean, it's one of the pieces of the holes in the conventional system is like doctors are really they're really taught to prescribe drugs. So they're, you know, they may see patterns, but there's no way to actually help understand, like take those patterns of dysfunction and say, here are some underlying causes that I'm seeing between populations of people that if we address that, then we would likely not need all the prescription medications. But it's very much a diagnosis prescription type of route that they're taking. So for these functional labs, like what are the labs that you feel like are they're the heavy hitters? You know, if you're somebody, maybe you don't have a chronic illness. Maybe you're just like, I want to optimize my health. In order to understand where you are on the spectrum of metabolic chaos, what labs are the most important that people need to be running? What do you see because you've run so many and there's a million labs out there. You know, people are like, oh, run mycotoxins, organic acids, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, it gets expensive, it gets overwhelming, and you end up splitting hairs. So what are the ones that you feel like these are the ones that in my experience make the most sense because the information we get is what's going to tell me where you are on that metabolic chaos spectrum?
You know that I did thousands of labs on thousands of people, and I started to recognize patterns. No matter what their problem was, it seemed like hormones were important. The immune system's important. Digestion and detoxification are important. And you know where I'm going with this. It's HIDDEN. So what I recognize over all this time and thousands of labs, there's a whole constellation. Hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. You could throw in oxidative stress. So there's a lot of indicators of why you feel so crappy. Or if you feel okay but just want to maximize and improve performance and things if you're an athlete, or if you just want to do anti-aging and longevity, you want to see what these markers are so that you can make improvements. So they're measurable, documentation. We say we're documenting that metabolic chaos. I'll tell you where that expression came from if you want. But so we use saliva, urine, blood, stool. In addition to those functional markers, we'll always look at food sensitivities, bugs and microbiome and things like that. So, but the HIDDEN handle or the foundation creates an epigenetic program. From that, you know what to do, and so that's what I was in the business of doing. I wasn't a physician; I was just supposed to help people. And different ways of helping people, right? So let's do this if it's okay. I'd like to give credit where it's due to physicians who work very hard to save people's lives and to relieve pain and suffering. And so if the difference between our backyard and their backyard is that if the downward spiral that we see people in, you see people, your clients, my client, my students and all their clients. It's a protracted downward spiral. So the observations we make, the hormone, immune, digestion, detox, and so on, can be you can capitalize on those. You say, oh, here, let's do this, let's do that. And I'll tell you what the protocol is, but there's time to heal in our clients. Physicians are phenomenal, and this is where the credit needs to be given. When the downward spiral is really contracted, not protracted, it's going down fast. Well, you go see a physician. If you come off a plane from West Africa and your temperature's 105 and you're bleeding from your eyeballs, you're not going to call your your nutritionist. You go get urgent, emergent care for that contracted downward spiral. Now, once you're out of the woods, now you're game. Now you're in our backyard, our sandbox, and we're going to run some labs that are functional, where there's time to heal, where we can correct, restore, repair, rebalance, whatever it might be. So that's a major difference. And
yeah, no, that's great. Well, I think we're on the right track here because, in talking about some of these labs, I see a lot of women, and hormones are always a priority because hormones, I feel like, are just getting assaulted by everything, right? Like they're downstream of so many other things, but that's an area that affects the quality of most women's lives. Like when your hormones are sideways, you feel terrible, and everybody around you can feel it because you just can't do what you desire to do on a day-to-day basis. So what's the difference between a hormone test that you say, you're running or looking at, and the difference between maybe a hormone panel that your doctor, your general practitioner, OB, whatever is ordering? Like, what are you seeing? What are you noticing that's different in the patterns that maybe they might be looking at? Because I see women all the time, like, I just did my hormones and they said I'm fine. And I'm like, well, we're clearly not fine. We are not in the fine boat. We are unwell. And so, if that's what your symptoms and how you're physically presenting, then there's obviously a disconnect. So what is it with the hormones specifically? And we can go into a few other of the labs that I feel like are super relevant, but I know that a lot of our listeners are being told their hormones are fine and their hormones are not fine.
Well, that's one of the tests. You asked me what tests do you recommend? We always look at the hormones. Matter of fact, it's where I first started. The first lab I ever ran over 25 years ago was a hormone test, and it was a saliva test. So it's looking a little bit differently. We're looking at some of the same markers, but we're looking at them differently. We're not looking at them just to replace the ones that are low. So most allopathic, standard medicine approaches sounds like hormones. I think you're estrogen dominant or estrogen deficient or progesterone, whatever it might be, or your testosterone's low. So they run a test, go, yep, pat myself, I was right. It's that low testosterone. Here's your testosterone. And whether it's men, women, whatever. So they're just looking at the markers and treating the paper from our point of view. Just here, take this. This will get that paper looking good. Next time you come in, we're going to recheck you. See you in 3 months. Do this, whatever. So we're looking at the hormones a little bit deeper, not only at the main sex hormones, but at the cortisol and the DHEA, the precursors, and the other hormones that are involved in stress. Now, every person's heard of stress, and it has an effect on the body. And one of the first things it throws off is that cortisol to DHEA balance. One represents catabolism, the catabolic action. One represents the anabolism, not cannibalism, just anabolism.
And so, not to be confused.
So, metabolism is every action in your body. Metabolism's everything. So there's catabolic breaking down and there's anabolic building up. Why not look at those hormones too? And because the sex hormones come later, and the problems come later too. The first thing that's thrown off is this catabolic, anabolic, and your body starts breaking down. Then you start to feel the effects of the sex hormone imbalances. So the answer to your question, which is what's the difference in the testing, the way we look at it, that we're looking for the underlying contributors to metabolic chaos and why is it? We want to know why is this out of balance, starting with that catabolic, and then everything else is cascading down below that in the metabolic pathways. So we don't look at low testosterone as the problem. It's the result of the problem, or these other imbalances. It's the result of the problem. So we run different tests sometimes. We use different mediums like saliva and urine and hair and stool and things, not just blood all the time, although we know how to interpret those too. And we look at different markers different ways.
Yeah. Do you think that for hormones specifically, saliva is the best way to look or evaluate hormones? Because most general practitioners are running blood tests on women for hormones.
The The gold standard is actually 24-hour urine collection.
Yep.
If you want to do a really good job on your hormones, you got to carry a plastic, bucket around with you and pee in it all day long. It's kind of a hassle. So blood becomes easier. You come in and do a blood draw. Saliva is even easier than that. It's an at-home test kit, and it's not real expensive, and you're more in control. So saliva has the exact bioavailable levels at that time of day. So, you can't get that from blood. You can't even get that from urine. But the time of day thing is sketchy when it comes to these other bodily fluids. But with cortisol, for instance, you can get morning, noon, afternoon, nighttime. You can get the DHEA from the morning or afternoon and see differences even in that. And so the time specificity and the bioavailability, it's all free in the way we look at it. It's all bioavailable levels. So some of the other things need either other markers to go along with it, like the sex hormone binding globulins, the cortisol binding globulins, and all these different things. And if you're not looking at both, plus the free and doing all this calculation, you might not be getting an accurate picture. Here's where the rubber meets the road, and you know this. Clinical correlation. Do these lab tests explain how you're feeling? And people have had lots of blood work done, and they have no answers. Nothing's really wrong with you. Here's your chill pill, or take this. They're kind of treating the paper. When we go over our lab reports with our clients, they're amazed at how well it matches up and explains exactly why they feel as crappy as they do. Wow, no one ever showed me this. And because we're not just looking at that one thing either. The stress, which throws you into a catabolic condition, which breaks down your sex hormone balances, also affects your immune system. Secretory IgA from the gut can go down. So what does that mean? Well, you're not as protected, your immune system. What does that mean? You're going to get a dysbiosis. You're going to get out of balance in the microbiome and flora. And this cascade keeps going. It's like dominoes. And we can track all of it with our methodology, the way we test, which you will.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that you just brought up this cascade and kind of a sequence, because I try to explain this to people all the time, because we always try to look at everything through a vacuum. Usually it's like once somebody's told, oh, I have a hormone imbalance, then it's just hormones. And so we're never looking or thinking anything else. It's like, that's the one problem that we need to fix. And if we fix the hormones, then we fix my symptoms. But what you don't realize is that the hormones, like you said, are connected to your immune system. It's connected to your guts, connected to your nervous system. It's connected to every other piece. So if you're not looking at it from every different angle, and then you just are myopic in your approach, just trying to thread the needle of hormones, you're leaving so much out on the table. And then you end up frustrated because maybe you, like you said, start filling in with bioidentical hormones or something like that. Like a doctor's like, okay, well, we're just going to bring your estrogen up, or you need more progesterone. But then you're not actually solving the problem. And so you still have immune insufficiencies, and you've got nervous system dysregulation. And so you completely left so many things on the table that need to be addressed. I would love for you to explain the correlation a little bit deeper. I love the clinical correlation too with symptomatology, but in running some of these labs, like what is it like? Maybe even give an example of a time where you've seen, okay, somebody maybe comes in and they're like, I have a thyroid issue, but you realize, hey, we need to treat the gut. We need to look at other things first. How do you in your mind look at the various different labs to be able to create a process where you can have an order of priority? Because I think that people get lost when they start thinking, well, I've either got one problem or I've got so many problems, it becomes overwhelming. So the practitioner, like my job has always been to be able to take all that information, like you said, and then make sense of it. What is it that's the priority? Where's the top? And then we need to be able to figure out that cascade, because I don't want to work on just the end product. I want to work on the thing that's creating all the problems, downstream. That was a very long-winded question.
The question is really valid and really a good one, because people don't know where to start. That was the problem they were coming in with 25 years ago, was tried this, tried that. I call it the cycle of trial and error, as you know, and they're just it's almost a crapshoot sometimes. because practitioners in standard medicine, they use, I call it the sounds like method. Well, it sounds like thyroid. God forbid they run a test on your thyroid and you're low thyroid. They pat themselves on the back. I found your problem, you're hypothyroid, and here's your medication. It's going to bring those levels back up to where they belong. Oh, yes, now we have them right where we want them. And that person might even feel a little bit better, but they did nothing to address underlying causes and conditions. Was there something wrong with their thyroid? No, it's just underactive. Why? Because of stress, some stressor. When you're under stress, your body's going to want to conserve resources, hibernate a little bit. Therefore, it would slow down metabolism as a protective and adaptive response. So the perfectly normal adaptive response for where you're at in your life and your circumstances is being treated like a disease and medicated. And we just don't think that way. You know, I wasn't allowed to in the clinic. There was physicians there. That was their job, diagnose and treat. My job was to be a healthy find out what's really wrong, and then give them lifestyle things to reverse if possible. So I have so many examples like that where people were told this or told that. Lady comes in the office, and this is a common story, and she's getting chiropractic and some modalities and things to body feel better and all that. And I could just tell she was really sad one day, Courtney. And what's wrong? Oh, it's this weight. I'm 40 pounds overweight, and it really sucks. And, you know, me, I'm the cheerful, bright guy who's going to give her some miraculous, fun thing to do to correct whatever the hell it is, you know. But I couldn't get any words out of my mouth. You know, I go, well, and she goes, it's just so bad, Reed. She goes, and, you know, the reason I'm 40 pounds overweight is because I'm on medication for the hives. And I'm like, and I just went to the doctor the other day, and I said, I'm so sick of this 40 pounds. You know, it's been 2 years on this medication, and it happened real slowly. And he told her, according to her at the moment, lady, you could be fat or you can have the hives. Take your pick. And still, I'm trying to get these words out of my mouth, you know, to help her. And she goes, Reed, so it's so bad. I just told him, well, that's depressing, doctor. And he said, I'll be happy to write your prescription for antidepressants. And so now I knew why she wouldn't let me get a word out. She was staring at the floor the whole time. And by this time, I've walked her down the hall into a treatment room. You know, our chiropractic patients would get a little trigger point therapy and then a heat pack before the doctor came in. Wanted them really relaxed, you know. And I said, well, first name, why didn't you ever try to find out why you get the hives? Her head snapped around so hard, I thought she wouldn't need her chiropractic adjustment that day. What? What do you mean, find out what? I go, why don't you ever try to find out why you get the hives? And you know, I'll skip forward, but you get the point. Like, that would never even occurred to her or her physician. Just, here's your medication. This is how you handle the hives. You have your choice, be fat or have the hives. And so we ran some labs to find out what might be causing this, or causal to some level. Changed her lifestyle, her diet, and a couple of things. And within 9 days, she called her doctor and said, I found out why I get the hives, and I'm not taking this medication anymore. And then 2 weeks after that, this is kind of the conclusion, she said, Reed, you won't believe it. I've been in the gym working out to a sweat, and I've been taking hot showers. I said, well, so she goes, no, even on the meds, for 2 years, I haven't had a hot shower or worked out to a sweat. Even on the meds, I couldn't do that. So you have completely changed my life. Now, it wasn't me. It was just a methodology that I was developing. But I took a little bow. You know, I said, hey, that feels really good. And when you help someone, it feels good. So to answer your question about, you know, the labs and things, I wasn't treating the hives. Nothing to do with the hives. I don't give a rat's patootie about your diagnosis that you have, whatever they called it. You know, it's like, well, what could be causal in this scenario? Same thing with asthma and ADD and other skin conditions and joint conditions and all kinds of things. Back then, what was really popular was fibromyalgia. Everybody walking in had fibromyalgia. It's just a garbage can diagnosis. If you had certain symptoms and observable, signs, then you were just told, oh, that's fibromyalgia. And what? Here's your pill or pills, And so I wasn't a physician. I couldn't do that and didn't want to. Yeah. And the clients didn't want that anymore, that crap,
That's such a common story too. I mean, that's not something that's rare. I mean, we hear that all the time with so many different people, and they're kind of on a hamster wheel, and they just think, gosh, maybe it's me. I must just be crazy. Like, my doctor doesn't seem concerned. And, they just say, take this medication. And then we become dependent on the medication because we think, gosh, if we don't take this, then we're going to have these flare-ups of symptoms. But we have to do our due diligence and really owning our health, like in a very radical way. Otherwise, I mean, nobody else is looking out for you. Your doctor's there to just try and alleviate a symptom most of the time, but not really find the things that are driving the symptoms. And it's breakdown in the body, chronic breakdown in the body. That's disease. Disease states, I mean, that's going to lead to longevity issues. Like, you will not live a long, full, healthy life because one broken down piece affects all the other systems of the body if it's not appropriately investigated and then brought back into balance.
Yes. So people could read the works of Francis Pottinger, who wrote in 1919, over 100 years ago, that specialization and trying to work on one part of the body will never give you as good a result as if you tried to work on the whole body together. That's how I developed the protocols, by the way, Courtney, which were what should someone do at home? We had lots of people coming in the office. I worked there 10 years, and I was really good at getting them to be very reliable. Wednesdays and Fridays, whatever, for forever. Not forever, but had people coming in regularly for their modalities, chiropractic, acupuncture, massage, and different things. But I started realizing real soon, it's what you do at home. Mrs. Smith, you're coming in 3 times a week. That's fantastic. What are you doing at home? I don't know. What should I do? Well, I started sending them home with this DRESS, one sheet of paper. That's now a book. Matter of fact, we'll give your listeners a free Dress for Health Success book if they want it. It's diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. So that's the Dress for Health Success model. And everything I worked towards was to systematize things. I feel that I'm a pretty good organizer. And one of my other strengths, I guess, is taking complex stuff and making it sound easy, simple. I was the patient educator. I had to talk, not down to anybody, but really come up with ways to explain so they would understand, go home, and actually do the things that were required to get better. And it isn't just go home and take your pills. You know that.
Yep. What's like, what have you seen because I've used the DRESS protocol with, all of the clients that I worked with, because it is a really great way to kind of find some, like, compartmentalize your life a little bit. Like, let's approach diet. Like, here's what we're going to work on with diet. And then here's rest. And those are pieces, honestly, that you should be evaluating. Like, I always challenge people, like, look at these different areas and really just do a self-analysis. Where are you in terms of your diet? Are you eating out all the time? Are you swinging through the drive-through? Are you eating late at night? How's your rest? Are you sleeping well? Are you getting up multiple times a night? Do you feel like it takes you a long time to go to sleep? Like, these are all things that you can run labs to really start to see a better picture, a deeper picture. But if you just start going through a couple pillars of your own health, it can reveal a lot, because you have to be sleeping in order to be recovered. You have to sleep in order for your immune system to be robust. If you're not sleeping or you got night sweats, these are all indicators that maybe you're not fully educated on, but it's enough for you to say, this isn't right. So I need to catch it before it manifests into something that's much more severe, that's really starting to put me in a place or a disadvantage. And you're not able to do the things that I would like to do. So looking at your diet, looking at rest, looking at exercise and movement, your nervous system, stress, and then the supplementation. I can't even tell you how many people, do you feel like this? I would love your opinion. I love good supplements, but it is like people have supplement graveyards because they don't even know what they're taking. They just have so many things because they're like, I just need to take it all. And if I just order everything, then I'll fill the missing hole and I'll feel better. What's your take on supplementation right now?
Oh, they're fantastic. There's some new things out that weren't around when I started that are very potent and effective, but you can't supplement your way to health alone. You can't compensate for a real crappy lifestyle otherwise. So I got things all over my desk, like everyone else. They're on my desk here. I've got them all over the kitchen counter and cabinets full. I got a graveyard too, supplement graveyard like everyone else. But I take mine twice a day. I get up in the morning and I do my morning supplements, and I do it late afternoon, even dinner time. So twice a day I do supplementation, and throughout the day I might add another little thing, or a nasal spray, or a skin cream, or whatever it is. There's so many ways to deliver good nutrition or nutritional supplementation into the body. So when we talk about supplements, I categorize them substituting for what's missing from food. Like there's just not enough vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients. There's not enough in our food. It's crap food. Especially if you go to restaurants and stuff, you have no idea. Not to mention avoidance of things like seed oils and chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, rodenticides, and God knows what they sprayed on there and radiated it with and all these things. So food is lousy quality anymore. It's not what my grandfathers grew. Up in Canada, they both grew, we ate natural food out of the ground that had manure in it, not chemicals. And so you start with just the things that are genetically required to be healthy. Again, the vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty, all the things, the elements I just mentioned. So you could take those, and then there's support of certain systems or organs that might not be doing so well. Your digestive system could use support. We take HCl, we take enzymes. If your brush border, if the microvilli on your villi, if they're broken down from dysbiosis, antibiotics, chemicals, toxins, then you're not really getting as much nutrition out of your food. So you can support that. So there's a substitution of what's missing. There's the support of certain systems, or like your adrenals. Hey, I got stress. Take some adrenal support. And then there's stimulation. Like if you're going on a plane, take some immune stimulator. You're just going to be people on there with snotty noses, coughing and sneezing and all that stuff that you hate to hear. You should just put earmuffs on when you go on a plane, so at least you don't hear it. So there's all of that. And then finally, self-treatment. Supplements you can treat your own condition or whatever it is if you know what to take, when to take it, how much, and things like that. So if you had an overgrowth of bacteria or fungus or a parasite or something, even viruses can be treated naturally. I just read an article on artemisinin, which is a 2,000-year-old, known for 2,000 years. It's a plant material that you can take. It's a concentrate, and it can help with viruses. So there's all this natural. So that's the 4 S's of supplementation, in case you didn't remember that part. Substituting what's missing from food, supporting certain organs, stimulating systems when you need to, and then self-treatment. And so supplements are huge. But if you're not also eating right, going to bed on time, getting good sleep, exercising, moving your body around, and reducing known and unknown stressors, then it's just, so if it's DRESS and this is S, it's just the pinky. It's not even most of the program. It's only maybe 20% of the program. So you got to be doing the rest of it. Then it fits in, then it supports and does the things it's supposed to do. And yet it seems to be what you hear alternative medicine, you sell supplements.
Yep.
Well, I don't really sell supplements, but I know a lot about them, and they're good. They're a good thing if you get the right ones. It's all about quality and things like that.
Yeah. I liked how you said it's the pinky. And that's one reason why I brought it up, because I think a lot of people are like, okay, well, what am I missing? I just need to have the right supplement. I need to have the right regimen. And they think it's something that they're lacking. But the important part is that you have the foundations covered, the foundations of your life, because the supplements are, it's a minimal life raft. Like maybe it props you up just a little bit, but it's not enough to reverse these patterns of breakdown, that are done by maybe your environment or your habits day to day and the food you're eating and the stressful life or the stressful job or relationships or whatever. Any one of those things can unravel everything else. So the supplements have a place, but I think that we really have gotten focused on, okay, what's the new fancy biohacking tool and I think that they're great, but they are not the savior. Like they're only going to ever magnify the work that you're doing. That's like the real infrastructure of your health. Like it will make it better, but it's not going to rebuild the house. If the house is full of mold and termites, like you can't just paint it white on the outside and put some cute shutters on it. Like the whole thing is deteriorating. You've got to be able to wipe it out and kind of rebuild some things. So I would love to ask you this because, you've had decades of experience looking at labs and looking at patterns in people and where our health is right now. I feel like the landscape of health has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. So what is it from your perspective that you have seen that's maybe alarming to you in terms of people's health? Like what is the one thing or two things that you're just like, this seems to be a commonality for a lot of disease, or it's a lot of repetition of patterns I'm seeing across the board in people that is significantly influencing their health outcomes?
Gosh, there's so many things. It'd be hard to say one. Obviously, we all got spanked a couple of years ago when that virus came around. That was pretty harmful, and the long-term effects still have not been fully determined. And the apparent remedy for it, or handling of it, wasn't helpful either, in my opinion. And so you've got a combination of things like that. But you could go back. I could say one of the most significant occurrences in my lifetime is the advertising of drugs on TV. When I was a kid, drug companies weren't allowed to advertise. You had to get your information from a physician or something like that. That was how they disseminated and distributed their products. And Congress changed the law so that drug companies could go directly to the consumer. And that's been one of the most, I don't want to use the word devastating, but it's a thought-changing process. So what they did with that is kind of cement that your health should be in someone else's hands, not your own, which is BS. Your health has got to be in your own hands. That's what I recognized when I started working at the clinic. I came from environmental law and conservation, saving the whole planet. And I decided I saw how bad the environment was on all this world, animals, trees, bees. And, I said, well, what about people? What about us? So I changed professions. I went to work in this clinic to find out about people, including me. And I had no health challenges other than a few owies from overused body. It's very well used. And maybe some dental work, right? So I never really been to a physician, and I was just amazed at the people in the office weren't taking any responsibility. Matter of fact, we were the engagement that they'd been kind of like, I'm tired of going to this and that and this and that, trying all these different things. And that's when I kind of coined the phrase for us, at least, was cycle of trial and error. Even some doctors said nothing's wrong with you, which they knew was bullshit. But no one had. So what I said at the time was, look, they got their ladders on the wrong wall. They're going to medical for what's not a medical condition. It's a lifestyle condition. It's a long-term, progressive, downward spiraling domino of and this cascade of stress, different stressors, the environmental stressors, obviously, because I was an expert in that. But then I learned about the mental, emotional, psychospiritual stressors. And obviously I had suffered myself from trauma and physical, the number of accidents and things, and the kickboxing, and it was really hard on the body. That cordless bungee jumping, I don't recommend that to anyone. And so, just teasing.
Did that actually happen?
No.
Okay.
But I've jumped out of airplanes and swam with sharks, and lots of things that are potentially they're just called high risk things. And so you got all these different stressors: the high risk physical, extreme sport thing. You've got the chemical stuff from the environment and from what you could put down the pipes. And you've got, of course, the mental, emotional stress. When you say stress, everyone thinks, oh, I hate my job, or my boss is an a-hole, or something. But hopefully they don't say that about their spouse, or their kids. Anyway, so there's all these types of stress. So everyone's a study of one. That's what I kind of decided early on is, it's not about a cohort, which is how drugs are developed. It's not, in this cohort, you need this drug. Well, because we ran it on 1,000 people, only 6 died, and like almost half got better, in some ways, some symptom was relieved. And everybody walking in our office was a study of one, just one. That's why it sounds anecdotal. So, that lady with the hives, I could tell you about a principal of a school calling me, Courtney. You might have heard this in my course, as I love the story. Lady coming in the office, hey, do you work with kids? Yeah, I work with kids, whatever. I was a football coach for 15 years. I worked with a lot of kids. And she said, why? Okay, because they're trying to send her kid home on drugs. He's got to stay home, or you put him on. And the drug of the choice then was Ritalin. And I said, was that a doctor at the school sent him home, to get put on Ritalin? No, it was just the teachers and the principal were basically diagnosing the kid with ADD because I said, well, he's paying attention, but just not to the teacher. He's paying attention to something else. He likes poking at the other kids. He likes shouting out weird things, whatever it was. So I said, I don't know if I could help or not, but we ran some tests and got the kid off of a toxic diet and into a better lifestyle, sleep pattern and things like that. And the principal of the school tracked me down through the mom after about 3 weeks, said, this is a different kid. He pays attention. He's getting good grades. He's not poking the other kids. He's not outbursting loudly, And I was happy. I was like, oh, great, fantastic. Yeah, this is cool. And then he goes, what'd you put him on?
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh, man, they don't get it. They just think there's some magic pill. I said, well, we put him on a better diet. We put him on a better sleep, schedule. And he didn't want to hear about that. He just wanted to hear, what's the pill? Where's the magic in a bottle? And so but I helped, and that was one of the first kids, and so now I knew it would work with kids too, this thing that we were developing. And anyway, so I just want to say that taking responsibility is the first step, and realizing that the data that's on those lab reports is yours, and you should collect it and have a file. And track over time what's going on with things, because you might get told, oh, well, nothing's wrong yet. Better watch this one, maybe, just try to do more diet and exercise, but if you come back next year and it's worse, I'm going to have to put you on some medication, and that kind of a mentality. So I think we were talking about the lifestyle, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. It's an epigenetic program because genes only matter this much, and epigenetics matters this much. So that's what I want to say about that.
So good. I love that story. I mean, I would lose my ever loving mind if somebody tried to put my child on a prescribed medication. My daughter came home like a few weeks ago, and she, granted, like we went down with like the stomach bug real hard after Christmas, and school had just started back up, and she had to get picked up early from school. She went to the nurse's office because she was like, her stomach did not feel right, and they wanted to give her Tums, and she was like, "Oh, I cannot have that. I'm like allergic to food dyes. My mom would never let me have those." And the nurse was like, "It's fine. They're just Tums." She was like, "I cannot have those." She was like, "I just need you to call my mom." And I was like, it's kind of harmless. They're Tums, but again, like definitely not a solution. And she had a viral infection, so it would not have helped anyway because, things just started to purge later on at home. But, it is so interesting how we've been conditioned to really believe that the solution is usually a lack of medication. Like your health problems is not because you lack pharmaceutical drugs. Like your body was not designed to break down and then need some type of synthetic lab derived pharmaceutical to fix it. I think like we said in the very beginning, you mentioned like, hey, modern medicine can get you out of a pinch in a great way. So if the wheels have come off, I mean, you've got some options to get your head above water, but then you immediately have to start looking at how do we bring balance back to the body, because there is extreme chaos in multiple systems. And that's why it's important to look at multiple labs at the same time to get an even picture. So you're not just looking through the lens of one thing. It's hard to get context, so looking at intestinal permeability, looking at a GI map to see what pathogens are there, looking at food sensitivities or hormones, like all of it paints a picture of your health. And the problem is that our conventional system is so disjointed because a general practitioner, they're not like, they don't have specialties in everything. They'll send you to a neurologist or they'll send you, to an OBGYN. But all of those practitioners are not talking about the picture of your health. They're not calling each other and saying, "Hey, this is what I found when I read." They're just like, "I'm in my lane. This is what I do. This is what you have. And here's how we're going to treat it." But they're never looking at anything else. And most people are not going, some people get desperate enough and you're going around to every specialist, in town. But again, you're never going to get one cohesive plan of how does all of this relate to my life? Like how in the bigger picture does all of this come together? So I think it's really important that we understand that, take responsibility for our health. And, I'd love for you to expound maybe just on, because I did the course, I did FDN, I helped a lot of people do the protocols that you yourself came up with. And I've actually seen this in my own clinical practice, like it works, and so maybe give our listeners an idea, because again, I think that modern medicine has its place, but if you want to maintain health, if you want to actually live a life where you aren't bedridden by chronic disease patterns, you have to do the legwork up front. So for somebody that's listening, that's like, maybe I should do some of these labs, like, what are action steps for them? Do they need to find a health coach? What do you feel like is the best way to do this? Because we're really only conditioned to think that there's maybe just options in the medical community where our insurance bills.
Sure. Well, a well-coached or well-trained health coach could be very helpful because they can help you with the goals and the direction and some of the habits and keep you motivated and things like that. They're good at finding out why you want to get rid of the problem. I was always pretty hardcore about that because, first of all, I worked in a clinic where there was some authoritarianism involved. Health coaches don't really have that authority. They can invoke it from the doctor maybe, but health coaches are about why is this a problem for you? What's your main complaint? Oh, that's not good. Migraines, irritable bowel, diarrhea, who knows? Then like, how often does it bother you? If it's every day, that's pretty serious. That's a real problem, and how long has it been going on? Oh, 3 years. Are you kidding me? That's really, I feel bad for you, like that. And now, what have you tried so far? And it's everything from standard, and even people suffering a lot have been told nothing's wrong with you. Or they've been given that one diagnosis. Like I said, your GP like me, I'm on Medicare because you have to be. I'm over 65. Matter of fact, I'm 70. And so when you go there, the first thing they say is, may I see your Medicare card, your insurance card, and what's your best pharmacy? Those the two things they ask you before you sit down. What's your favorite pharmacy, your nearest? But it's weird because they know you're leaving there with a prescription. That's just how they operate. So the idea of self-treating is when it's appropriate and when it's a lifestyle related condition. And we find people in all stages of downward spiral. And if you can get a health coach that can get you to realize, look, this has been going on too long. You've been suffering. You've tried everything. But why do you want to get rid of this thing? Because those are the motivating factors that get them to do a more natural program. Everyone wants to just, do you have a different pill? Something anecdotal, like, oh, here, try this. This has been a wonder for, 1,000 people or something. No, so you've got to get them to attach to what it's going to be like when they don't have that problem anymore. That's health coaching. And is there anything going to make you resistant to change? Or anything going to hold you back? Why haven't other programs worked? And it could be, oh, my spouse won't let me spend the money, or, my spouse thinks it's a waste of time, all this crap, on my counter. And so you've got to go through the person and their life and who they are and their circumstances and things to get really good results. So that's another thing. Actually, doctors are starting to hire health coaches. And a lot of them hire graduates from my program because they know something about anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry, because that's what we teach. But so I think the idea of getting the difference, the old Western authoritarian, take this and come back in 3 months. They know it doesn't work. There's statistics, 63% of all prescriptions aren't followed. People don't get it filled. If they do, they don't take it because they know it's not really going to work. And they're willing, they don't know it maybe on the surface, but they know underneath in their subconscious or heart that I need to make changes. And that taking that pill is not going to make me make changes. It's going to keep me from making changes. It's going to like, oh, here, take this and just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. That doesn't work. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah, no, you totally did.
It's huge. And,
Yeah. It's funny because the older that I've gotten, I've realized how critically important it is to have mentorship in different areas of my life. Like people justify a financial advisor. Why? Because you don't want to find out when you're 70 and you're retired that you don't have any money, that you don't have any assets, that you're in a really uncomfortable position. People will hire trainers at a gym. Why? Because they want to be able to fit into their clothes like now and next month and next year. So, but we just, for some reason, like the way that our culture has really set up medicine, it's, well, just, go to an annual doctor until something really falls apart. And then we'll send you to a specialist and, we'll handle it from there. But we really should be looking at our health as something that we need to be proactive about. Like we need to have coaches. You need to have, like, if you're meeting with a financial advisor or you've got a spiritual mentor in your life, like you should have a health coach in your life too, because a lot of the work that you just said, that's the stuff that moves the needle. Well, why do you want to get better? Why do you think this exists? Because most of the time I found working with people, I didn't even have to have the answer. I had to just get to the right question to get them thinking about how they maybe got here, because they probably have a very unhealthy home environment and they've just been living with this, and that they think, well, why is my physical body not where I thought it would be? Without evaluating things that carry so much tremendous weight.
Yes. Well, it's a beautiful, wonderful field of endeavor, and it's a good business if you want to make it your business, or it's a good vocation if you just want to work somewhere and let someone else get all the customers. There's lots of that going on. So it's also a great hobby. if you just want to do it for yourself and your family, learning how to take care of a body, learning what some of the markers are, some of these labs are, and knowing where to get them is very important. So if you look up FDN practitioner in my area, you might find one. But health coaching in general is a good place to start. Like you said, like I have a personal trainer. I've had the same one for 14 years. And other people that I work with, business coaches and lots of people. You want to get an expert in your area. Most FDN practitioners, or FDNs we call them, have an area of, they kind of niche based on their own problem that they overcame. It's really interesting. And just this morning, I did a post-grad interview. I've done a couple thousand of them with a recent graduate who she suffered mold and water damage, basement, and the whole family got sick, and man, what a journey and saga that became. But now she took the FDN course. She learned all about the lab work and natural protocols, and mold's a little special, but that's her niche now for who she can help. So she can start her own business helping with people in that area. It's really kind of a cool thing.
So good. Yeah. I mean, it's that whole pain to purpose. Like there are so many just silver linings to some of the things that we walk through that have been really hard. I mean, talk about like deep, dark seasons of your life. I mean, I've walked through some and I'm going through some now. And I just think like, I have a choice to either just resist this, be unhappy about it, and kind of grit and bear it until I get out on the other side, or I can lean into the process of refinement and what can I learn? Like, what do I need to learn from this? Because there's likely somebody that will be in my path in the future that will be in the same trenches that I've been in, but I'll be able to offer words of hope. I'll be able to offer solutions. And I think that if you have that mindset, we talk about mindset on so many of the other podcasts, but it changes the way that you look like at your problems. Like the very health barrier in your life could be the one thing that catapults you into a different level of you being able to carry your purpose. And I think that that's so significant. So just even changing your mindset. But I love that story. You're right. So many people, that is what they end up helping people with. It's because they themselves walked through that trial. And I think that that says a lot when you're building trust with people, because you don't want to just be told, here's your solution when they're completely disconnected from it. Like, I want to follow somebody that's also facing the same struggle. Like, you did it. So show me the hope and the pathway that I can take to get on the other side like you did. So this has been a fun conversation.
Mindset's pretty much everything. And you have control over it to some degree. If you read Viktor Frankl's Man's Struggle for Meaning, you'll know that it's Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. He was in the Auschwitz prison, and I forget how he got out of it, but he said the one thing they have no control over is my thoughts, my mind, while he suffered torture and pretty extreme oppression. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have a purpose in life. I think I'd be lost. I don't think I've ever been depressed in my life. I guess I've always had a purpose, regardless of what it was. Most of it's centered around making people happy and contributing service of some sort, So, but I've had that since I was a kid. I'd go rake the neighbors' leaves for free just to be shovel their snow and stuff. Old people, like real Boy Scout stuff. And it's been my, if you ask me, what's your secret? I go, just service, man, help others, and it will come back to you. I'm also
That's incredible.
Pretty successful business-wise. I'm considered in the 1%. And so, I got here by just helping other people, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, really what you've been able to do, I mean, it has a ripple effect because you're empowering other people that can intercede for communities, and their own families, which I think it's just such an honorable thing. And it's served me, it served my family, and it served so many clients that I've worked with. I heard, I was listening to something yesterday and I wrote this down. It has so much relevance to what we just kind of like came around for this conversation, but he had said, purpose expedites healing. You heal faster when you're doing what you were created to do. And I think that just like perfectly encapsulates like where we just landed in that conversation, because being disconnected to your purpose has a direct correlation to your health. And if you don't think that, like you just said, like there's so much that you glean from being able to serve others. And that's what we're, designed to do, is to carry a purpose.
Well, I think so. And I will say that the FDN community is a bunch of do-gooders. There's no question about it. They're people who that's how they operate in life. If you don't, you'd be in trouble. So very good.
So good. Well, guys, I hope you've loved this conversation. Reed is a wealth of knowledge. Like I said, I've been following your work and done your course before. So we'll link where all of the resources are in our show notes. Cool. If you're looking for a practitioner too, you can definitely go to the FDN website. You can look for practitioners that are either in your area. A lot of people work remotely. I know I worked with people all over the country. So, finding somebody that maybe specializes in the area that you're looking for support is always a great place to start. But just know that you have access. You have more access to resources than you think. You just sometimes have to know where to look for it. And so that's what this podcast is all about. We love bringing resources to you, and in hopes that some of our listeners can really gain some traction in their life where maybe they felt like they're treading water. So Reed, any final thoughts that you want to leave with our listeners as far as, the work that you've done, resources that you have for them, ways to connect, anything like that?
If you're, I'm kind of a business to business guy. I teach a course in functional lab work as it applies to all natural drug-free protocols. We are fully accredited by at least 8 different organizations, including the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. So they give all my graduates a holistic health practitioner certificate if they join and whatever. So I'm a teacher, is the way I look at it. And I just love teaching. And so if you might be able to help you on your journey, if you're a health coach or health practitioner of any kind and you want to get a real fresh look at things, revisit a few things maybe. But it's a course that's very robust. This isn't what I like to say, and I'll finish with this, Courtney. I can teach you in 10 months what it took me 10 years in a clinic to learn. It took me 10 years to develop FDN, and about 10 months or less I can teach you. So that's if that's helpful. And what you said is the most important thing. That's your state of mind. Start with a position of gratitude in the mornings. Just remember to say thank you, and everything will be all right.
That's so good. Simplified living advice. I mean, that's just real. That is real life. Just, incredible thoughts and truly like a fundamental practice. Like those are just practices. Like if you don't do them, like it's not surprising that maybe you're negative and you wake up and you're irritable. So, be intentional about those practices, and habits and rituals, because sometimes we just get caught up doing other things and we don't even realize what we're subscribing to, the mentality we're subscribing to, the thoughts that we're subscribing to. So guys, it's been such a joy. Reed, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to see you, to officially meet you here on camera, and just love the work that you're doing. So guys, if you're interested in the FDN program or learning more about Reed's work, hit up the show notes. You're going to find all the resources down there, including a link to the book, the DRESS, which we talked about a little bit on this episode. We'll make sure that that's linked in there for you too. And if you've loved this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening and tuning in today, and we will see you on the next episode.